Hey everyone, and welcome. West of here. I get to hang out with my friends Brian and Joe again for a little bit this afternoon. And today our topic. So just a couple of days ago, we did a live social media stream where we chatted through the value of collaboration. And today we're going to dig into the question: have you ever wanted to write a book? And really, because Brian put together a team of folks that both Joe and I have been able to contribute to and be a part of, and so on, around the idea of leadership, but he's helped folks do that. But gosh, we run into so many different people on a weekly, on a monthly basis to say, gosh, it would be really neat to write a book one day. And I remember my HR days, my wife, when I'd come home from work with all these stupid stories of stuff that happened, she would say, you ought to write a book one day. And quite honestly, at that point in time, it was like, I want to forget about most of this crap because some people are certifiably nuts, but we've got to employ them. Whole different topic here today. So I'm going to get off that and let Brian and Joe say hello to you, and we'll chat through some ideas.
Well, it's so great to be here again with you, Wes and Joe. And last week we talked about collaboration, and now we're going to talk about a collaborative book. So this is exciting, and it's what we do. So we're excited about having this conversation today.
Oh, Brian and Wes, it's exciting to to think about. Hey, we're past episode 1. Woo! We're on a streak. We showed up for episode 2. This is just great. I look forward to our conversation on the topic before us today, but more importantly is just the fact that we continue to find value with each other, and we're just talking backstage before we got live about our journey to get to this point, and that's a book in itself. Just the stories that we can tell about just getting through life, getting to the point we're at right now, how we're positioned and where we're going in the future.
Yeah, Joe and I discovered neither of us have desire to go back to Northern Indiana or Michigan between October and March. It's just done. We don't like gray that much. So God bless you if you're watching this in one of those places. We just don't want to be there. Brian and Joe are actually in Lakeland, Florida. I'm in the beautiful Shenandoah Valley of Virginia. We have some winter weather, but we haven't had much of it this year. So anyway, here nor there on that. So again, the idea was that we wanted to touch on today is, have you ever wanted to write a book? So when we were chatting, I think one of the comments that Brian made as we wrapped up the conversation on the value of collaboration last Thursday in a session like this, and you can circle back to see that and so on, talked about a percentage, and Brian, correct me, but I believe it was 81% of people, according to a study, not Wes's study that says 78% of all statistics are made up on the spot. A study that Brian found that's actual that you can verify said that 81% of people want to write a book someday. Brian, do you want to talk about that someday idea?
Well, we know that our friend John Maxwell wrote the book Today Matters. And it is so important that you do what you want to do, or at least take the steps toward doing what you want to do today, because guess what? Someday's never coming. It just doesn't, it's not on a calendar anywhere. Have you ever seen someday on a calendar? It just doesn't happen. And we have so many things in our life that we delay and we procrastinate on. And this book thing is so many people want to do it, and yet so few people actually take the time and effort to do it. And so the statistics say that only 1% have actually written a book, and the three of us have done that, so we're part of that 1% club. But we just want to invite others and kind of help them along the way to meet that goal and that objective, the dream to write a book.
Brian, that's one of the things. I'm a self-professed not very smart guy, okay? And you guys can certainly vouch for that, right? But over the course of my career, so I'm high school educated. I've hit college with a stick when I've had to, just to make sure I don't go to jail for things like employment law and some of the stuff that I had actual practice. And I've been able to get some credentials and do some cool stuff and have a gob of experience. But it's really been based on hard work. And I would argue that one thing alone, that work ethic and that just being willing to take action, even if I don't know all the answers, is probably that piece that put me in that 1% to be able to even do a chapter in a book, let alone start the process. And I don't think I told you guys I'm somewhere about 12,000 words into a book I'm working on right now, and so on. But whole different topic. But it's really about just taking some action. And so many people will sit on it and think about it and stew on it and think about it and sit on it and stew on it and haul off and do nothing.
Yeah, and very true. And And yet, what do we do? Sometimes we find a book on a shelf and we'll open it. Right? Somebody wrote that. I've been a big fan of Tom Clancy, and one of the, especially on the uh, fiction side, and how he was able to weave a story. And if you think about Red October, if you've read Red October, he took it from several different perspectives, all these events happening at the same time, and in the near the end of the book, they all it comes together, and it's like, wow, I look at that, I could never put those stories together. Sure, I could, but it would take, where are you going with your story, and what's the end result? Where do you want to go? And sometimes authors just want to put something out, and they go on journey with these characters, and they end up at a different destination than they first thought.
So along the lines of, I've never claimed to be very smart. I almost didn't graduate high school, and every now and then I bump into my 11th grade English teacher who got so frustrated with me. Guys, it was always fun because she sat me down right before the final exam and says, Wes, you're going to go to summer school. Yeah, no, I'm not. I've got a job. I'm not going to summer school. Well, you're going to take 11th grade English again if you don't get an A on this final exam. Well, so Wes had to buckle down and do it, and Wes got an A. He actually got 100 on the final exam, just so you know. But she was so angry because I just refused to do anything that resembled writing or reading when I was in her class, and she was so frustrated. But I was telling Joe before we came on that since 2016, I've written almost every day, probably 500 to 700 words every single day of my life since 2017, and a bunch of different places. But Brian's done such a wonderful job when he says, hey, Wes, we're putting this together. Would you like to do a chapter in Voices for Leadership Volume 1? He put together an outline for here's the structure, here's the process, because, most of my stuff hasn't necessarily fit together. And Brian, you did a really good job of making sure people had a voice that they could speak into it, but also they had a format to follow. So it wasn't just like, dear God, what do I do?
Well, Wes, I'm glad you shared that story about your English teacher. I have a similar story, but my English teacher, one of the kids in school said, Brian, if you don't quit messing around, you're going to fail. And my English teacher said, no, Brian will not fail. I don't want him back next year. so I had a guaranteed pass, but honestly, I struggled with English. I barely graduated high school. I had to do community service to get my final credits to graduate high school. So that's my story. And now I'm an author. Can you believe that? But anyone can be an author. We always hear this thing about stories sell. And why do they sell? Because people can relate. People can relate to the story about Wes or Brian or Joe, and can relate to how you put your message across. And as we talked about, you thought it was a struggle to reduce your content down to 800 to 1,000 words. For me, it's a struggle to write 800 to 1,000 words. It's just not, writing is not something I enjoy doing, but I do it because I love to tell stories and love to get a message out on. And I tell people all the time, if you only write a chapter in a published book, what kind of legacy are you leaving for people? So it's just amazing. It's an opportunity. You talked about the structure. We made this bite-size intentionally for both the author. Like you said, it's a whole lot harder to write 14,000 words than it is to write 800 to 1,000 words. So we made it bite-sized for the author. We made it bite-sized for the reader, and then just made sure everybody had their voice and got this diversity of thought. So that's just how this came about. And we're excited that you enjoyed the experience. I didn't feel so structured when I was doing it, but thankfully it did finally come together based on the outline and plan.
So, Brian, from a distance, I wasn't sitting over your shoulders, stalking you, or like Ray Stevens said in the great Rudolph song or Christmas song, whatever it was called that he wrote, where Rudolph said a stake out at your house watching with binoculars. That wasn't me. But I did interact with you a good bit through it. And what you did that I would have probably never been willing to do on my own at that point in time is you lined up publishing, you lined up copywriting, you lined up editing, and all the pieces. You lined up graphics for the cover and the back and all the different pieces that through and maybe Joe did a lot of that, but the fact of the matter is Wes didn't know how. and Wes got a ton of value from watching that process, just like in a previous collaborative book where again, I didn't do it, but I watched it. It gave me perspective for, my goodness, I think I can really learn from this process as to how I can do it myself moving forward. So, Joe, do you want to chat about that? Because I'm thinking you probably had a hand in a lot of this.
Oh, just a small, very small amount. I, you can't see this because my green screen has blacked out the book because it's the same color. Brian maybe got it.
I'll help you
There
out.
we go. Thanks. But just the simplicity. In the end, it's just a set of simple steps taking forward. Yeah, there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of communication to be handled with the authors, with the publisher, with the graphic artist to create the pictures on the front and get it, and then communicate it out. We have monthly Beyond the Book calls that Brian hosts, and he's had a lot of these authors on his podcast. So there's been a lot of work going in to help people refine the message and then tell something beyond the book. This one chapter isn't their whole life story. And, it's one snippet, one thing that we can do in less than 1,000 words of a topic that you can share with someone on a week, in a weekly series, like with your organization, with your team. You can take a chapter and just have everybody read into that and discuss it and figure out, okay, where's the gaps in our organization on this.
So part of the reason we share about this is Brian found that stat, but the other reason is Brian is currently working to put together Voices for Leadership Volume 2. So, Brian, I think you said you've got somewhere in the half or just over half the authors that you've interviewed and approved at this point. You've still got some spots that you're taking applications for. And it really gives folks, especially if you're interested in the leadership space, and it's not pigeonholing, because leadership is a broad topic. I mean, like we talked about last time on this, Larry Levine talks mainly about sales leadership. And I would argue leadership's leadership, but if you've got your own focus, it could be a good opportunity to really learn the process, but also share your voice and make an impact on the other people. Brian, do you want to touch on what you're doing there and kind of what that scope looks like for Volume 2?
Well, Wes, I enjoy it. In fact, we talked about Volume 1 to start with, and you were both talking about how hard the work was. What I've come to realize is leaders are busy people. And I love all of our authors, but herding together 40 people to meet a publishing deadline is a challenge. And so we're facing the same challenge this time around. We signed up a new author just yesterday, so we'll have a new author joining. I'll be announcing soon. But so that puts us at 25 of 40. So we still have 15 spots available. And what you said that we actually do is we interview our authors. We want to make sure that they fit the bill, they fit the message, they fit the brand. I mean, we want to stay true to what we set out to do. And that takes a little bit longer to make happen, because we do interview our authors and find out, does their message fit? And will they be, part of the team? Because that's what we're doing here, is building a community. It's more than just, sending in 1,000 words and getting your name in a book and making it a best-selling book. It's about creating a community and something we can all thrive together in. That's what the main goal is.
And that really goes back to collaboration that we talked about a few days ago, right? And how do we form those stronger relationships? Understand, here's the strength that Wes can bring, albeit it maybe is small. Here's the strength that Joe can bring, and clearly that's really, really big, because he's doing a lot of the detail stuff that Wes just usually doesn't pay attention to. And here's the big picture that Brian brings, and the unique markets too, because that's been something interesting. Gosh, of the different folks that have been involved in both Volume 1 and Volume 2, Brian, it's been neat to see how much reach has expanded for everybody, because I've got a certain market that maybe you guys wouldn't have been in, maybe not. But it kind of goes for everybody that's been involved, right?
Absolutely. And I like to tell potential authors that books open doors for you. When you say I'm a published author, it's going to give you a little more clout. It's going to be another feather in your cap, if you will. And it helps people say, I'm a published author, and people say, okay, well, that's a good thing. That's a check mark on the box, and it helps those that aren't already published. But then what I was amazed by is I invited some best-selling authors and some people that already are doing some amazing things, and found out they said yes too. So they saw the value and they joined us. So that's just amazing how this community has come together with the beginner to the expert.
Amen to that. So, Joe, you've in putting some notes together to make sure you kept me somewhat on track here. You pulled some different quotes. Do you want to pick out one or two of those and share? There's one that if it were up to me, I would share, but I'd rather you jump in on those.
Who's that one from?
I'm not gonna tell you, but I might add it if you don't.
Oh, well, I think Faulkner, William Faulkner, noted author, right? And he says, read everything, trash, classics, good and bad, and see how they do it. Just like a carpenter who works with as an apprentice and studies the master. Read, you'll absorb it, then write. If it's good, you'll find out. If it's not, throw it out the window. And just getting started. This is a technique that Lisa, who's working on a particular aspect in her journey, got advice from a friend who's an editor. And she said, you got to dump your brain before you start writing. You got to get all the stuff that's in your brain that is just going to deter you. You're going to think about, and you need to really focus on putting the story out, getting the words out. So write 3 pages. I don't care. She said, I don't care if it's this, a very small page, if it's a matchbook cover, write 3 pages or more, give yourself a few minutes to just write to get it all out. Then you can focus and really get comfortable with the words that you're going to put on the paper. And then, like Faulkner says, if it's trash, throw it out the window. But, writing something, really, you just need to determine your purpose and really understand who your audience is and brainstorm. Just really a brain dump the ideas that you have, and then discern them. And then start. Once you got that topic narrowed down. For me, as I was writing a chapter in volume 1, and Brian invited me to bring another chapter into volume 2, it's really about what's that topic and what's dear to my heart, and what's the message. Because as I was telling you, Wes, beforehand, I wish I had a mentor at certain stages in my career, and it was my boss, but my boss didn't have enough time to really mentor me. So I had to go find somebody else, but that didn't necessarily develop in the way that I needed immediately, to getting that advice. So being able to first think about it, write it, and then bounce it off a couple people and say, does this make sense to you? Does it add value to you? Of course, you want somebody that supports you and has some idea that it would be valued, and not just saying, oh, good job.
And your point's solid too there, Joe. I mean, how many people, there's naysayers in every aspect of life too that will criticize too much. And the one piece that I'd kind of poke back on Faulkner, not that I'm somebody that can poke back, I'm just willing to, is, gosh, don't always look at it and judge whether it's good or not and throw it out if you think it's not good. Because I mean, Cindy and I've been writing content, material, and lessons for 5 years now. And I look back and I think back on some of the early stuff and I think, my goodness, that's rough. But when we pull it out and as we try to customize and tailor it for a specific organization, if we're going to share, we often find ourselves going, wow, this is actually pretty solid. So it's through a different lens. I mean, we're typically accustomed to be really, really critical of our own work until we can remove ourselves from it and really take an honest look. So don't judge yourself too heavily if it's the first time you're writing either.
Wes, that is an amazing point. And in fact, you hear one man's trash is another man's treasure. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, I had a coach me and train me to say, what you think is simple, what you think is just elementary, is extremely complex to someone else. And something you've been practicing for 20 years, that again, it's simple for you, but there are people out there that will pay you to overcome that hurt and learn that elementary lesson from you So I agree with that wholeheartedly. Don't throw it out. Don't throw out the baby with the bathwater type deal. So keep those kind of thoughts and ideas for this writing. I mean, man, Joe talked about brain dumping. We talked about technology and how we could reach out. I mean, I've reached out across the world to gather these authors together and grow this community. We have these smartphones. I'd say if you're watching this, you probably have a smartphone. And you can dump brain load into these notes on your phone and just store these under a heading, under a title. I have about 3 books that are right now just seeds. But every time I have a thought that fills that book or that idea, I brain dump it there. So great ideas for both of you. Appreciate that conversation.
Well, and to your point, I'll build on that, Brian. One of the things that I learned in the first collaborative book was never delete something or change it. If you're going to make a change, do a save as and call it version 2 or version 3 or whatever it is, because who knows when you're going to go back and maybe it doesn't fit for right now. And that's the beauty of a Word document, a Google Doc, whatever it is that you're using. My goodness, don't ever lose that content. Don't ever delete, because it could really be good, just not for what you're doing right now.
Yeah, the relevancy changes, right? So what's relevant today may not be relevant tomorrow, and vice versa. That you may write something out now, and that doesn't fit this book, but it could fit another book.
So, guys, one of the reasons we're doing these, we're hopping on and doing this live stream to the different social media channels that it goes to, is not only to give the idea around the Voices for Leadership concept, but also to talk about the retreat that's coming up on April 14th and 15th in St. Petersburg, Florida. And guys, real quick, I'm going to share the screen because I see, Brian, you've got some new stuff on the screen, and I'll also put what's it called, the picture or the URL as well. I see you've got the Dr. Kelvin McCree's now got a video invite. Brian Covey's got a video invite. You've got the registration date details and so on. Brian, do you want to touch on that just a little bit? I'm not going to play anything on the screen. I just wanted to pull it up, and I'll go ahead and move us back to the other screen that way.
Yeah, Wes, again, 2 amazing people that joined us in the last Voices for Leadership book. They're going to be joining us for the retreat. These are 2 practitioners. So when we talk about Brian Covey, you're talking about someone who's done billions of dollars in mortgage lending. But that's not the real point. The real point is he built a team of people and built a social following to be able to do that. And he's going to talk to us, me included. This is something I want to learn about, how to build your social brand and how to grow inside social media and just provide value to others and then gain value back as a recipient. So Brian's going to pour into us on that. And then Dr. Kelvin McCree, this guy's speaking on stages for the Project Management Institute, the Baker's industry. He spoke with the Cake Boss. He's also done a lot of things for like medical with thousands of people in the audience. And he's going to talk to us about a speaking business and how to just set up a speaking business to make money. Is anybody interested in making money with their speaking business? So those are going to be 2 of the things. I am working on something else. I can't announce it yet, but I talked to someone yesterday that's going to be pretty exciting if it happens. Another one of our authors that's leaning in. So hopefully we'll be able to announce that soon. But it's going to be a power-packed weekend in an amazing location. And we did build in a little bit of fun in there so you can have fun here in St. Pete in the warm weather and escape. Maybe if you're from those northern states you were talking about earlier, come down here to this nice mild temperature and see these wonderful beaches in Florida. It's going to be great. We're going to have a great time.
Brian, one of the things that is most exciting for me, you've made an option for folks, if they're, ideally it was for the contributing authors. It's the folks in the Voices for Leadership community. But you said earlier, I guess you and Joe and I were talking a few weeks ago, and you says, hey, if we have open spots, could we offer this to prospective authors as well, so they understand the community, get familiarity with it, and really see how they could indeed get value and collaboration from the community. Now, what you've also done is opened up the option for a spouse to attend at a reduced cost. And I think that's really cool, especially based on the location And there's even a platinum experience built in that's just phenomenal, in that there's this special dinner cruise and so on and so forth, or whatever it is. But the long story short on that is you get to see a magical sunset over the Gulf of Mexico from the Skyway Bridge, and that's pretty wild. So you want to touch on any of that?
Well, we're just trying to create immense value for those that take time out of their busy lives to come to Central Florida. And guess what? If you could bring your spouse and your children, maybe you could make a little mini vacation and kind of blend some business and pleasure together. So we kind of built that in there again, like you suggested. Somebody asked, one of our authors said, "Hey, can I bring my spouse?" We said, "You know what? If you'll just cover the cost of them, bring them along." So that's what we did there to add that on. And I think that's going to be a great feature, so that you can have those people participate in this event, and then also, have a good time and a weekend away from wherever you're located. It'll be a lot of fun.
Joe, you want to toss anything in and around the retreat?
I think it's just a great opportunity to get away. We're all leading separate businesses, and we don't get that opportunity to talk other than maybe, a video conference, like I mentioned, the Beyond the Book call. But this is an opportunity to just break away from that for a short amount of time and really get to know each other in the community. And, maybe it's not collaboration, maybe it's just support. Maybe there's something that you can take advantage of by being there in the room. Networking with the other authors and those in attendance.
Yeah, I've often heard the idea of sharpen the saw, and I've heard it attributed to Abe Lincoln and all the other quotes that he has on the internet and so on. But I remember a quote, and I'll probably butcher it because it's not in front of me, something from Peter Drucker, and he said, effective action followed by quiet reflection is almost always followed by more effective action. And this may not necessarily be quiet, but it's collaboration that can really be some of that reflective collaboration too. And, I think I shared last time we did one of these that Cindy and I try to 2 or 3 times a year, at least, sometimes more, get some time away, even if it's just a couple days, that we can really hone in and focus on what are the things that we're doing that we shouldn't be doing, what are the things that we're doing that we need to do more of, and what are the things that we're not doing that, dear God, why aren't we doing them? And I've found the Gulf Coast of Florida has been the most effective place for us to do that. I'm not saying swarm down there, everybody that ever sees this video, because I want a spot, but it might be fun to catch this retreat.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Joe, I will touch on the one quote that grabbed me, because I'm
Okay.
not a grammar guy. I'm not a proofreading guy. I'm kind of let's throw a bunch of it out there and we'll get it better next time. So usually as we work through it, I see the one that you've got from Mark Twain. It said, substitute damn every time you're inclined to write very. Your editor will delete it and the writing will be just as it should be. And gosh, that's the value of having the community and being able to be involved, because there's other people that's going to sharpen you.
Right.
I understand my grammar is going to not be good the first time through. And if it's up to me, probably not the second, third, or fourth. But the value of that collaboration means we get to work with people that have strengths that we don't have.
Absolutely, Wes. Very, 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 very true.
Great job, Joe. I love that.
Damn true. That's pun intended. Yeah, Brian's like, tone him down. Don't get him started, Joe. So anyway, well, guys, what are we missing? What should we share that we haven't? We're approaching the half hour mark. What should we touch on to make sure anybody that's watched this far in gets significant value from this time?
Well, Wes and Joe, both of you know the importance of being intentional. And I think that's what I want to leave with is being intentional. If you've thought about writing a book, contact me, contact Joe or Wes. We'll help you at least evaluate the process of what we're doing and the simplicity of it that we mentioned earlier. So if you want to write a book or be an author in a book, we have that opportunity. We've simplified it for you. So do that. If you're on the bubble and you want to just come kind of poke the wheels, come to the retreat and check us out, see what our community is all about, and decide then if you want to join us. So that would most likely be for volume 3. But that's the 2 things that I would say is be intentional. You've been thinking about doing this for a long time. Today's the day.
And Brian, on the Voices for Leadership page, I've got that in the screen that you see. You've got to click to learn more. The application process is really simple. So it's it's simple, guys. I'm not going to promise you it's easy, but it's really simple. If it's something you feel like, gosh, I'd like to learn more, might be something I could really do. So, if you're looking for difficult, Brian's not your guy, right? You didn't make the process hard. So, Joe, any closing thoughts before we say goodbye for the day? And
Brian made a absolutely great point here, that it's just about get started. Get the words out. Somebody somewhere, at least one, needs to hear that story that you have that will help them, because they're at a crucial point and they need to be able to hear from you.
Amen to that. And gosh, you may never know, and you may never touch them if you don't do it. Well said, Joe. So, well, guys, I don't know when our next one is. I'll have to look at a calendar and we'll chat through that, but we'll do that offline. So if you hung out with us today, whether it was live or you catching it later on, love to hear feedback in the comments or ask questions, or if you've got ideas for future topics, we're happy to do it. Our goal is to really center this around the Voices for Leadership idea, but also to drive some value in the process. So we appreciate you hanging out with us today. Gentlemen, always appreciate the time with you guys and look forward to seeing everybody soon. God bless.
Thanks, Wes. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Wes. Thanks, Brian. Thanks all.